bring us to our keynote speaker. He's a legend. He's a huge name in graphics and illustration, and now in creative consulting is the correct term, Ted?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
But anyway, he is always a great talk. We used to have him back in with the guild. We used to have him speaking at least once a year or so, and was always extremely informative. So give it up for Ted Leonhardt.
Yay!
Oh. Thanks, guys. Thanks.
We all do this clap like this.
So everybody's painfully aware of, it's not just the COVID. I mean, the digital changes that we're going through and the economic changes that we're going through are huge and painful. We did a seminar this week. So we did, Jessica Knapp and I did a negotiation seminar, 2 hours a day for 5 days. And we got 13 attendees, and we had 2 small creative firm owners, both of them doing really well. And then we had one person who's working as a freelancer during the days and driving Uber at night. Yeah. And everybody in between. And that's the reality for creatives these days. You know, it's if you're in a niche that's hot, e-commerce is hot. If you're, organic foods is hot right now. So if you're in a niche like that, you can be doing really, really well, and you're not even aware sort of the fact that, somebody else is a designer with lots of skill and lots of experience and got laid off from the Richards Group because Stan Richards made a racial slur in a meeting, and they started losing clients like crazy. And so the Richards Group went from being one of the premier and one of the 2 major advertising agencies that's still independently owned, into close to bankruptcy. I mean, they're really struggling. So, they and Wyden Kennedy are the only 2 agencies that are really large that are independent anymore. So, and it's just, and so she loses her job because he does something stupid in a meeting, and, and hundreds of others apparently. So, so that's the, world. And I was born in 1945, so I'm an old guy. And I had no awareness during my life that I was born at the perfect time to catch the wave of the biggest growth of the middle class in history. And, my father was damaged in World War II, as lots of people were. I don't know whether it was PTSD or what it was, but he had mental problems. And Sears and Roebuck took him back, he had a job. He worked at Sears prior to the war. They took him back after the war. He had a job wrapping packages at the old Sears store down on Lander Street, where Starbucks headquarters is now. And we had a house that was paid off on Beacon Hill. We had a new car every few years. My mother, for 4 years of my childhood, my mother taught school. The rest of the time she didn't work. And he had a retirement with Sears and lived to be in his 70s. My mother lived to be in her 90s. And when she died, there was still money in that retirement from Sears. I mean, that would never happen today, and I didn't, I had no idea that I was growing up with that kind of blessing, basically, it's like, and I'm working with a lot of college grads right now, trying to help them get jobs. I have read that it's approaching 50% of graduates are not able to get jobs out of the current college classes. 50% are not able to get jobs. And I'm preparing to write an article for marketing right now on doing interviews with students. And the interviews are just painful. I mean, 100, 200 applications in 6 months. and no job. And you know, once in a while you get a reply that says, sorry, you don't fit for some reason. And most of the time you get no reply whatsoever. And of course they're applying online through these, you know, mechanical internet systems. I mean, it's bad. But of course, if you get a job and you're working for Amazon in one of these delightful jobs where you're making $200,000 or $300,000 a year, because that's the other side of it, and you're walking, you know, pre-COVID, you were getting off the bus and walking through Denny Park where people are sleeping in the bushes to your job. I mean, that's the contrast. Anyway, it's hit creatives particularly hard. And you know, my business, so I started my own design firm in the late 70s, and then it grew in the 90s. And again, it was a period of extreme growth and corporations paying zillions of dollars for branding. I mean, we charged sometimes $1 million for a branding assignment. Unheard of today. Unheard of today. Not happening. And I have clients with my consulting practice that still work for some of the large branding firms, you know, the World of Landor, Interbrand, JKR, Turner Duckworth, et cetera. And, you know, sales guy living in New York, working for one of those big firms, making barely $100,000 a year, can't live. He has to have an apartment where he shares it with 3 other people. You know, it's that, you know, so even the top end is hurting. WPP, which is the largest holding company in the world, and that whole business of holding companies buying up creative service companies started in the early 80s when Martin Sorrell left Saatchi and started WPP. And he began buying up the agencies and gradually bought, you know, and Omnicom in the US. So he was in the UK. So Omnicom in the US copied him. Publicis in Europe, in France, headquartered in Paris, copied them. Dentsu in Japan, in Tokyo. And those holding companies today, I follow them all with, you know, Google alerts. What I see is lots of management changes. And what's that about? Well, it's about sales lacking, firing people, getting people for less money in those jobs. And the word on the street is the top people make pretty good money. Anybody else is making minimum wage or less. WPP announced losses of over £1 billion. I think it was $1.2 billion as of September. I think it was their third quarter announcement. I think it was $1.2 billion in losses. And then there was an announcement a few weeks ago that they actually lost 300 million pounds more than that. So they lost something like $1.5 billion or $1.6 billion in 2020. And Publicis, which is their French competitor, number 3 in size, I believe. Publicis is rumored to be being shopped to vulture capitalists right now. I don't know what's going on in the Publicis office in Seattle. I don't have any contacts there, but Publicis overall not doing well at all, obviously, and losing money. So Omnicom, no growth, doing everything they can to fiddle the growth.
Yeah.
So and then the other thing that's going on, which is this, you know, the giant consolidation.
That guy? Oh, hey.
Excuse me. The other consolidation that's been going on, we had news industry owned by thousands of individual owners turn of the century. And today, the media in the English-speaking world is owned by something like 10 or 15 billionaires. You know, so there's been a huge consolidation in media. And I just stumbled online today that there were over 2,000 political cartoonists turn of the century in the U.S. Over 2,000 political cartoonists working for, I'm assuming, mostly newspapers in 1900. And today, it's something like in the teens. It's like 20 or 15 or something like that. And of course, why does that happen? Well, if you are if you are a billionaire, you're not buying up the media because it's so profitable. You're buying up the media because you don't want the media to criticize you. And who is the best criticizer of the powers that be? Political cartoonists. So guess who gets the axe? Political cartoonists. So however, then there's all these other things. So on the one hand, we have this giant consolidation going on, and mass media, the way it used to be. I mean, it used to be that it made sense to spend serious money to pay for an illustrator to do an illustration for editorial or for an advertisement, or a photographer for that matter. And of course, the reason that it made sense to spend serious money for those services was that those mass media publications were viewed by millions of people. Life magazine at its height had something like a circulation of something like 8 million. So all of a sudden, if you've got an ad in Life magazine, it makes sense to spend, I don't know what, $10,000 in today's dollars for a photograph. I don't know, but in other words, serious money. Today, most advertising agencies are doing ads that run on Facebook that are designed to be seen by a few people. And advertising agencies are producing so many ads that nobody's even looking at them because you can't possibly look at all the ads. And every ad is expected to be seen by a small number of people, so nobody's spending any money on them. And where are the photos coming from? Where are the illustrations coming from? They're coming from these online services, Stock, or some of these other online services. So then where's the bright spot? Well, the bright spot is in niches. So my clients in my little consulting practice, and it's small, I have like 10 clients now, so it's very small. My clients that are doing very well, what are they doing? I have 2 clients that are in e-commerce that are doing extremely well. I have a client that's in gaming doing extremely well. I looked it up. The game industry right now is predicted to hit 58 billion in sales this year. Last year it was 40 billion in sales. So huge growth and big numbers overall. So lots of opportunity in games. And then natural foods packaging is another client of mine doing very well. And my e-commerce clients, I have 2 clients that are in e-commerce. Both of them have combined their e-commerce skills with creative skills, and they find that they make better margins on the work they do combining creative services with the e-commerce services. So where the advertising agencies are letting people go, and they in the case of my client, they are hiring people who have the same skills that the big advertising agencies had: writing skills, design skills, art direction skills. They are transferring those skills into doing e-commerce websites, and those same skills now all of a sudden are worth money because they're combined with the e-commerce skills. And clients can see revenue growth from their e-commerce sites, and they see the sites that emotionally appeal to people more strongly are doing better. So, there's a growth area. The whole world of natural foods and of store brands has been doing very well. And I don't know if you guys noticed this or saw this, but I think it was 2 years ago that Procter and Gamble, which is the biggest buyer of branding and advertising and related services, they announced that they were going to spend $2 billion a year less on the service part. We're not talking media, we're actually talking people and what people do. So they're announcing $2 billion less. And the reason, of course, is that they're hit hard by internet sales. Harry's Razors is a great example. Gillette, which is owned by Procter and Gamble, actually had to drop their prices by 30% because of the impact of Harry's Razors and competitors in online sales. So that's one thing. It's hurting the traditional giants like Procter and Gamble. And then the other thing is store brands. And my clients that are involved in store brand support. And what are they doing? They're doing package design, they're doing marketing communications design, they're doing website design, et cetera, for store brands. They're doing well. So it's this big shift. And I think there's actually more creatives employed today than I can't prove this because I couldn't find any numbers to prove it, but I think a little more digging, I could prove this. I think there are more creatives employed today doing marketing related communications and illustration and design and so on, and writing and related, than there were at the height of the advertising business. It's just that they're all in these other niches. So Etsy, all the creatives, Etsy had, let's see if I can find it here, significant sales, $4.9 billion in sales, 20% growth last year. And I have a colleague who did $100,000 in revenue with what I would think of as silliness on Etsy. So what does her silliness consist of? She created a unicorn shower head. And some supplier to Printful, which is one of these online services that provides printing and coffee mugs and all this stuff, with 3D printers, prints these shower heads on demand, and you can screw it onto your shower and take a shower every morning under a unicorn and be, I guess, blessed by the unicorn. She sells doormats that say, "No bitches welcome." And all kinds of other silliness. And in the last 3 years, she's done $100,000 in revenue off of Etsy. She does coffee cups with silly illustrations on them. She just created her first music album, and she's selling it on Spotify. Yes, I think it's on Spotify. And she, of course, got herself a little team. They're all freelancers. They did all the graphics that go with the album. They did all of the communication stuff that goes with the album. The singer on the album is somebody that she found online. So the whole community, and it's all about, I don't think she's turned 30 yet. It's all about a breakup that she had. So she wrote a song around her breakup and how heartbreaking it was. And she created this little community of people all online, recorded it, adjusted the music, and it's now selling on Spotify. That's going on. So on the one hand, we have this huge consolidation that's going on. You know, we have all the advertising in the world is on Google and Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, I guess. And it's gone away from all of those traditional other markets, magazines. numbers of magazines being produced are greater today than at the heyday of magazines. So there were like 7,000 new magazines launched last year. So in other words, all these old things are tanking, but all these new things are taking off, and they're actually bigger. I mean, Facebook has 2.7 billion users. Facebook is a monolith, and the monolithic part is bad. However, it provides the potential for reaching people as individuals in a way that was never possible before. So my wife, who's a therapist and who, deals with people, all the horrible things that people are dealing with every day for 8 hours or more every day, when she comes home to relax, she does we have 2 Siamese cats. She does cat videos and she posts them on Facebook and Instagram. She has 5,000 followers. She has pet food companies pitching her now to put pet food ads and cute things for pets. She's saying no to it so far, but we could use the income, so maybe we'll get there. But I mean, I think so Facebook, monolithic and bad. On the other hand, people are reaching people in a way that you could never reach before. And where are the followers for her silly cat videos? They're in Germany, they're in Australia, they're in South America, they're in all over the United States. And what are these people? It's a weightlifter trainer in San Francisco, a bartender in New York, a dentist in Germany, a therapist in the UK. I mean, the people are, it's an auto mechanic who works on Fords or something. It's like, it's wonderful, So there's all this. So on the one hand, we have this demise of this traditional media and the closing down of traditional media. On the other hand, we have this opening up. YouTube numbers, I have them here somewhere. They're huge. 1 billion postings on YouTube, I read. And on YouTube, so one of my a guy who occasionally touches in base with me, he did a YouTube video on how to change the air filter in his Camry. And he did it as a lark. And this guy's experience is doing videos for giant Microsoft and Starbucks, huge events where the screens are, a mile long and, whatever, and thousands of people see them. And of course, nobody's doing those events these days. So he's scrambling around trying to find what to do. But he knows how to do videos and he knows how to tell a story. So he does a video. We had 70,000 downloads within days of views of his video and got some advertisers interested. So, you know what I mean? So it's like, whoa, talk about, head shift. I have a client who lives in a rural area where there's lots of skiing, famous skiing area, can't mention it. Also made his living in these giant events, which of course have dried up. What's he doing? He's doing a whole thing on the outdoors and selling books where there's these codes, I don't know, the little square codes with all the things in it. And you can scan the code with your phone and see the video of where the skiing happened in that place where he did the illustration and selling the books. So there's this, shutting down on the one hand. So like the business that I was running in the 90s, which I thankfully sold unknowingly at the top of the game, total luck, never happened today. Never happened. So that's kind of my story, is this giant shift and helping people and trying to find how people are. In fact, by the way, I'm in the process right now of maybe creating a magazine online that is entirely Northwest focused for creatives in the Northwest. This is just in its infancy right now. And it is focused entirely on the new ways that creatives are making a living. And the idea is to write articles and, writing articles and finding articles that are all about how creatives are surviving and dealing with this giant shift that's happening in the world that we're living in right now, and surviving and hopefully thriving. And I don't know whether I can find an advertiser base for it, or it needs to be subscription or whatever. But it doesn't cost much to do it, because I can do it online. Obviously, there will be some costs involved. I'd like to be able to pay writers. But anyway, and I'm associated right now with Larry Kaufman with his Marketing Northwest online publication, and I write for him every couple of weeks, and I love that. And so he and I were talking about shifting Marketing Northwest into becoming Creative Northwest, but right now he's thinking that he needs to stick with his existing audience, and so that's a little bit uncomfortable for him, but he's willing to help me do a new thing if I decide to actually do it. But I've got the bug. I've always loved magazines. I've always wanted to do a magazine. I did a beautiful print magazine with no idea how to sell it a few years ago, which was insane. Spent a bunch of money and lots of time, and wish now I hadn't done it, except it's beautiful and I love doing it. So anyway, but online is of course where I want to be. So part of the reason that I reached out to Bill was in fact to, connect with you as a community for my magazine, and also just to, hear what you're doing. So I'm hoping that we can have a discussion about the whole process of, kind of what you guys are finding in terms of income as cartoonists, as illustrators, as creative people surviving in this time. So turn off your mutes and talk.
Well, I'd like to say something. The caricaturists in the country are doing a lot to promote themselves through digital art. They're getting gigs by doing digital gigs, and they can be at the event or the event is online. So they're creating online for an event that's online. This is bringing in, the artists that can work on their computers, can do digital artwork, are the ones that are getting the work.
Sure.
And it was about 5 years ago 5 or 10 years that most people were shifting over to digital creation. Rhoda, which is now Rhoda Draws, moved from San Francisco down to Mexico, and she's doing a fabulous business doing digital artwork, as well as having live sketch seminars and traveling around Mexico. So
Nice.
it depends upon, she got sick of the bureaucracy of San Francisco. And it's funny about Trump wanting to build a wall.
Yeah.
We are having a lot of expatriates moving to Mexico.
Yeah.
Because there are
cheaper to live there too.
Cheaper to live there, and they have communities that are focused on the arts. All kinds of art, crafting, as well as illustration, design, sculpture, painting.
Yeah, cool.
It's all there.
Yeah.
Could I mention about Elizabeth mentioned Mexico, and I don't remember exactly when it was, but the Mexican comic book industry basically crashed, and it completely reinvented itself. So that is now something that has got library access, bookstore access. They have a much greater amount of respect. The art form is amazing, expanding, and is now part of the regular book world. So Mexico is just always ready to go the mile when it comes to the arts.
Japan is another great market. The Japanese honor artists. And for caricature artists, they can, the ones that are doing digital are doing very well, but it's still a problem because they can't do live work. But commission work is where they're getting the payments.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the price range has come down. The
Mhm.
more artists that fill that position, the less they can charge.
Right.
Well, I don't know if you guys saw the link for the little mini convention, and there will be, like I say, hard and soft art sales. Your convention sketches have always been like $20. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but people just want a quick sketch. And some people get quite ornate, some people get quite lightweight, but people still want those sketches. Oh, and let me mention somebody right now, and Ted might want to look at this too. Look up Joe Phillips on Facebook, and he is this incredible artist. And right now, he has all of a sudden got possessed with something he calls the Witch Boy. And he is a gay gentleman, so he's doing all these, you can imagine, absolutely gorgeous different kinds of witches. And then he decided to do these great big long panels in which people paid him to be personified as witch boys or witch girls. And you do have to, and they're paying big bucks, and you have to see these. He's completely possessed right now. And I mean, you know how when somebody gets possessed, you're envious of it because their life is taken. These the witch boys are naming themselves, and they're saying which kind of spirituality they are, and it's a great deal of fun. But just look up Joe Phillips and look what's going on right now with him. His whole community has got fixated, and when you see the costumes that people are wearing or not wearing, all kinds of dress codes in all kinds of wonderful colors, and everybody portrayed who they are with their own body types and everything, usually on a broom.
Cool.
It is just exploded. It is it's amazing just to watch this thing go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna find
Well,
that.
fantasy is selling big in the world of serial novels. You know, there's those Korean companies that started up that are making it possible to publish serial novels, and the authors are paid pretty well, I guess. And the biggest sellers are fantasy, unicorns and dragons and witches and stuff like that, and romantic tales, aimed at 20 young adults, is doing very well apparently in the serialized novel world.
Oh, I just found Joe's page. Would anybody like to see a screenshot of that?
Sure.
Because it's gorgeous. Let's see if it's working.
Yeah, just a second.
Okay. Oh, yeah, because we always have to get that set sooner or later. Somebody's got goodies to share.
You're good, Donna.
Okay, let's take a look at this, and I'll show you. This is just a little bit of what Joe is doing. Here are the Witch Boys, and they just started out with 1 or 2 sketches, and all of a sudden, he was drawing all kinds of people, and they were naming themselves, and it was like, the Bear Witch of Winter, and they just took over his life, the costuming, and every one of these people on here, on this giant posters he's doing, these are all real people, and they're paying for the privilege.
Wow.
And these are stunning. Aren't they gorgeous?
I love it.
This is gorgeous.
Joe Phillips, you do want to friend him on Facebook. He's incredibly prolific, and he is the sweetest man on the entire planet. That's all there is to it. If there was more Joe Phillips in this world, we'd all be better off.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the
it.
share. Isn't that gorgeous? Yeah, it's amazing. What gets me is all the costumes are different. They're all different.
Well, there's a lot of skin.
Well, they of course, you have to remember that the hatred of the human body was not, it's not normal. There's a certain demographic that hates it. And of course, we're freeing ourselves from that now because these are just human bodies. And some of the witches are fully clothed. They have very fancy outfits. But others, the only thing they got on are their fancy rainbow colored mohawk.
Yeah.
I think it's just a joy to get the daily posting to see what kind of nuttiness the witch boys are up to.
Yeah, cool.
A friend of mine does that. He does a web comic, and occasionally from his Patreon, somebody gives him a certain amount in his Patreon, and he'll put them in a bit part in the comic.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
fun.
Like
Oh,
looking in the background.
bit part of the comic.
Bit part in
Yeah.
the comic. Oh, and here's a hint on how to turn a reviewer around who doesn't like your work. You grab him and you put him or her in the
Yeah.
comic book as a character, and all of a
Yes.
sudden they are a fan.
Yeah.
I admit it's one of my one of the items I have for my upper tier on Patreon, though I haven't gotten any takers yet.
Well, Patreon, in fact, Patreon being a subscription-based opportunity for creatives, and the thing I noticed that I liked most about Patreon was that they showed how much money people were making. And because there's so much bullshit out there, you know, consultants selling, you know, smoke to make your, I mean, I get pitches, I think easily 3 times a week to how to get more clients, systems, people selling systems to consultants and so on. And it's all, as far as I know, it's all bullshit. I mean, the numbers they always offer are, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales I'm going to get. But on Patreon, people are actually saying, I'm making $1,000 a month. I'm making $3,000 a month. I'm making $500. I've only made $100 so far. I love that honesty because it gives the rest of us an understanding of, kind of get a sense. We can then look at what they do and think about how much energy they're putting in it. We can kind of look at their social media stuff and get a sense of that. You know what I mean? And it's like, so I really appreciate Patreon for that. But I also know that it's hard to build the following, enough of a following to make money on the Patreon, in the Patreon system.
Well, it's about feeding the wolf. And I've had people come on and say, well, I tried Patreon for a month. And it's like, dear, you need a year of just regularly posting. And I do something that my people love watching because everybody gets to see the final work. But when I'm doing something developmental, my Patreons get to see me develop things. And like for existence right now, you know, I hate drawing cars. So I'm teaching myself to draw cars, and you can see me making mistakes and yelling at myself, and, you know, just they get to see the whole painful process. And it also kind of helps other artists, and that they're going, oh, I'm not you know, somebody who's been in the business for years is still yelling at themselves for not doing it right, and still struggling with a system they don't know well yet.
Have you noticed how badly Frank Miller is at drawing cars in Sin City?
Well, look, nobody in comic books except me and Deanna Kennedy knows how to draw a horse. And except for 2 people who will get, okay, there's 2 people who don't draw them well. Actually, I should say there's 3. They don't draw them quote unquote well, but they have their own comic style that matches their artwork. And that would be Stan Sakai, Sergio Aragones. Look at their horses, they're silly, but they match. And Mark Monlux, who does some rather nice little stickman horses. He's got the whole horse idea down. He's made the effort to at least take a look and see what a horse is. So I'm always, I do a lot of things, like one of my big panels used to be how to draw a horse right, damn it. And everybody would show up and see how to do that. But right now, because I hate drawing them, and I certainly sympathize with Frank Miller, I hate drawing cars. I just hate it. So I'm in the middle of right now teaching myself to draw the things so that they will at least look a little better. I'm never going to be happy with them, but
I've posted a link to Brad Geiger does a website called Evil Inc. And his business platform, he uses Patreon as a launching point. He also has a thing called After Dark, which is a little racy as well. He's making a fairly steady income stream via his Patreon, but that's just the first step because he uses it as a publication device for launching his various Kickstarter projects. And he was able to fall back onto that when the convention circuit fell through. So I would suggest taking a look at his. Also, he did an interview. Was Brad Geiger here with Cartoonists Northwest?
He was at, no, that was the Guild, the Graphic Artists Guild.
Okay.
But
he's certainly a great person to talk to about how a web cartoonist can pivot and make a success in the current environment, because
And what's his niche? What does he do? What's his niche? What does he do?
he's a web cartoonist.
But what is the style
Genre.
or
It's mostly superhero parody at the moment.
Mhm.
He has an
huh?
interesting cartoon. It's sort of a relatively realistic style, but with deliberately cartoonish features in his characters.
Uh-huh.
It's a comedy single strip gag based strip that could be then compiled into a full page. It's you got two factions that there are actual companies. The reason it's called Evil Inc. is that all the villains are part of a union of evil villainry, and all the superheroes belong to another company, and they have to deal with things like 401ks and pension plans, and there's a lot of inside gags happening along those lines.
I see. Huh.
And
So
he's
it's just
been up there for what I would say about 10 years. He's
Oh,
been around.
a bit more than that, but yeah.
Another thing I want to say about Patreon is it's amazing how much money you can start making and start building it if you just have your $1 donations, because every one of those people is $12 a year, and it just builds up. And if you get 12 of them, that's $12 for the month, and they just keep adding on, and they tell their friends and everything else. And also when it comes down to a time of, well, do I want to drop my subscription? Oh, it's $1 a month. And they're not quite, we've all got some of the big donors and actual patrons and things like that. But that little dollar one, don't ignore that little dollar, hook. Later on, they might upgrade to $4.50 or $5 or something, but that dollar one will keep them watching.
Yeah. And is it like the superhero thing is all the big fancy comics, DC and whatever
That's
the
DC
other
and
one
Marvel.
is? Yeah, Marvel. And the superheroes seem to be always appealing to people for whatever reason. Is it the superhero thing that makes that Mr. Geiger be successful? Or is it the corporate gags with the 401ks and
Probably both.
The combination of his humor with personal relationships between the characters set into that his world.
It's like the British form, where they take very odd things and make them everyday in everyday life. It's, I don't know, there's where you have a bunch of demons who are detectives, or the old Wolf and Birds series where you've got lawyers for monsters. It's just that everyday world connected to what we would think of as fantastical. That's always appealing. People love that.
Yes, every day connected to the yes.
People need to do, but Patreon. Well, I was going to say about you're talking about the big two and the superheroes, and if you actually go into the webcomics world and you start hunting down through all the individual, there's far more people doing individual artwork, their own styles, their own ideas. There's millions of them out there, and they're using everything from Patreon to DeviantArt to Facebook to little animations, YouTube, Kablam to print paper floppies. Everything and anything is a business model that everybody uses, and then can find their market and deal with things like a friend of mine who is for years he's had trouble selling his work because it is dealing with very heavy duty sexuality. And right now he's doing Lulu, which is the Frank Wedekind German story from the 1920s, and extremely blue, but it's about sexual child abuse, that kind of thing that was being addressed at the time. And so he's had a hard time selling that, but now he's being able to sell it because he's this is kind of like your model for the later Lolita, Dr. Zhivago, Redbeard, everybody who deals with where girls face their sexuality too early. So even people dealing with very sensitive topics like like Rebecca was talking about are able to get their message out without they're not defying the censorship, but they're using the right models to deal with it. What happened? Where'd everybody go?
Well, I posted a link to Christopher Baldwin. While he's not making a lot of money on his Patreon, like Brad Geiger, he's using it as a platform to launch his Kickstarter books and other things. But Chris mainly gets his income through grants that he applies for to do graphic novel projects or
Nice. That
art
is smart.
projects or being involved in an artist community. So he does a lot of traveling with his wife, who also does the same thing. And so they often will move around from state to state to state, fulfilling these grant proposals. I think it's very interesting how he has tapped into a way of locating public funding to supplement his income and doing these interesting projects that aren't on the mainstream radar, but is usually more localized or community involved.
What's the name of that? It's an email list that comes out. It's something like Cafe that lists, I don't know if you get it too. It lists all kinds of grants. David Lasky went for one. Remember he did that book on the Carter family. I think that was a grant funding that he won. I'm not sure, but I know he was winning some of those.
It wasn't the Carter family. It was that one about gasworks, but
Right, it was the gaswork one. Okay, that's the one. Yeah, and Dave would have the link to that particular page. Those grant people.
yeah, if you have that, you can. Yeah, no, that was a good one. I knew a lot of people who gave that one a try.
Although I think all of us, when we saw Dave Lasky, we went, "Oh, to heck with it!" You know, Dave's going to get it. He's the great guy for doing local history.
If you can come up with an interesting idea for your local arts commission, I think about 4 years ago, I did some whiteboard animation for the city of Tacoma that I got a grant for to do two
Nice.
1 minute public service announcements about copyright. If you hit them with the right type of project, just check around in your local towns. Right now, this evening I've been filling out an application for another Tacoma Artist Initiative project, where I'm trying to just have it's the most stupid idea. I'm just going to see if they'll take it. I want to do a jigsaw puzzle that has hidden objects in it and get them printed and put them around at the various nursing homes and senior citizens, because I want, in 2019, I had 3 different family members go into hospice, and there was something I found out is when you go to any of these facilities, they're filled up with jigsaw puzzles. It's a communal way of people to spend time. The sense of completion it gave, the sense of family it gave was really interesting. And I thought, oh, it'd be great to make some jigsaw puzzles and bring that part of the community to light. Anyway, that's
actually, let me give you a quick hook into that. The Washington State ferries put jigsaw puzzles out on all the ferries for people to use. So you might want to approach them.
They used to, but right now nobody's sitting at the tables anymore.
That's true. They're not doing that anymore. How do they use the ferries?
It's all taped off. Last time I was on this last week, everything was taped off. You
Oh my
stay
God.
downstairs or you go upstairs. My husband just goes up to the top level.
Yeah. Wow.
And now it got very quiet again.
Are we tired? Yeah. Well,
We're thinking.
I can say 2 things that I don't know if these would be helpful for people here, but the Graphic Artists Guild has an article, the new COVID relief bill. It includes, for anybody who hasn't done it or did it once, the Paycheck Protection Program loans. It's got additional funding for those. And they seem to be really targeting to small businesses, micro businesses. If you already got a PPP loan, which you can apply for as a single individual creator, you can apply for those loans. And we have a bunch of guild members who did. So if you already did apply for one of those loans and you're on track for paying it back, or you already have paid it back, you can apply for a second loan. If you never applied for a loan, if you have a significant drop in income compared to the previous year, you can apply for that. And it's gotten a bunch of our members through a really tough spot. And the thing is, if you do your record keeping really carefully, if you meet the terms of that loan, it will entirely be forgiven. So this is really, really important. And a lot of people think you have to have an actual business and hired people or a storefront. You don't. You can do it as a creator. You know, you want to read all the documentation, make sure you apply correctly, etc. And then the second thing that the bill included is if you're a mixed earner, in other words, you get income from like a 1099 or something, and you also get self-employment income. A lot of mixed earners couldn't apply for pandemic unemployment assistance from their states because their state regulations didn't permit it. But the new COVID relief bill actually says that if you could not qualify for pandemic unemployment assistance, you can actually, because you're a mixed earner, you can apply. You can now apply as a mixed earner, and the subsidy is, I believe, $100 a week. So $400 a month isn't a lot, but $400 a month versus nothing a month can help out a bit. I mean, it's not. So what happened is a lot of people are mixed earners. The amount they got from self-employment was really high, and then the amount they got from their 1099 or whatever the form is was really low because they got most of their income from their self-employment. And then when the pandemic hit, their self-employment income really dropped. But they couldn't apply for the pandemic unemployment because they had these two income streams, which meant they had to go on regular unemployment, which took a look at their tax forms and said, well, you got so little money on this 1099 that you're getting this minuscule amount for your unemployment insurance, which is asinine because they lost their self-employment income. So this will give you an extra $400 a month. So take a look at what's being offered. We've got an article on our website. There's a really great website that we've linked to where you can figure out if you're a mixed earner or not. And there's a lot of resources for applying for PPP loans, but really they're there to get you through a bad hump. So take advantage of it. Because I think a lot of creators don't think they qualify, but they do.
Very good.
That's really good to know. Thank you, Rebecca. Good information.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments? Or
I have a question for Ted. When he was talking about the going into like niches like video games or even doing more freelance work, has he seen there's been a system of degree creep that's coming into like the design and illustration business, like the need to have a bachelor's degree now instead of, you know, being able to build your resume on the amount of work that's being produced? Has he encountered that?
You mean, are people being more demanding for degrees?
Correct.
Well, the corporate world is very focused on very precise credentials to fit, you know, roles. I mean, that's my sense of it from what I hear from, you know, recent grads and people who have been in the corporate world. And I think it's still, I mean, my colleague Jessica Knapp has a PhD in healthcare communications research. You know, she thinks that her PhD actually gets in the way of getting business because people kind of don't know what to, they're a little afraid of her because she's, you know, got a PhD. But in what I see at people actually getting jobs, it's just like it always was. If you have the skills that fits the client for whatever reason, you get the gig. You know, they want something done. And whether that's a small creative firm or it's a giant corporation, I have a client that employs like 60 people now. So I actually have 2 clients that are employing larger numbers like that right now. And anyway, he has 1 client, and it's a giant corporation, but that corporation interfaces with all different customer types. And so they do different visual communications, marketing communications for all these different customer types. So they're working in the automobile industry, they're working in the high tech, they're working in healthcare, they're working in transportation. So what happens is the marketing materials are different for all those different categories of work. So there's tons of you know, videos and motion graphics and little landing page websites and all kinds of stuff. And what is the client interested in? Getting the damn work done and making it be cool. You know, it's so that hasn't changed since I, you know, got my first job at Boeing a million years ago. You know, if you can do what they need to do, you get the gig. However, ageism is out there, major ageism. I mean, I've had clients that have lost their jobs in corporate settings that are in their late 50s or in their 60s, and they have a really hard time getting reconnected. So, and I know it's ageism, you know, it's a zillions, they'd rather hire a 30-year-old to take that role than hire a 61-year-old or a 59-year-old. And of course, they would never tell you that because it's illegal. So, but
well, that's why these individual roles online are so good, because how often have you been talking to or had a good friend over on Facebook or whatever, and you don't know their age, you don't know their gender, you don't know their race. They're a fun person, you know, and you know, how can they do it? You know, right now, and I don't know if you know this, but Diane Warwick just hit Twitter, and she's got 1 million young friends that are just discovering her music and having a blast. And that's the other thing about having the advantage of the internet, is that they don't know who you are.
Yeah, that's true. That's totally true. The corporate world, however, it looks to me like the corporate world is really against anybody with any age.
Yeah.
And it can be really, really painful. I mean, I had a client a year ago. Ultimately, I helped him get a gig, but he'd been running a group inside a giant corporation doing all of the graphics for a particular category of work within that corporation. And he'd been there for years, and the group was like 12 people. I mean, it was a good sized little in-house group. And the corporation hired a new president, and about a year after the new president came in, of course, what's the new president's job? Get the stock up. Well, how do you get the stock up? You increase profitability. And what's the easiest way to increase profitability? Fire people, because they're expensive. And so they laid off the whole group and decided they didn't need anything that group was doing. So here's a guy, he's in his very late 50s. He's got kids about ready to go to college, you know, the mortgage, the whole ball of wax. And he's in deep shit, you know. And ultimately he landed a gig. The horrible irony was he landed a gig with another organization and was in fact building a group to do something similar, being paid to build another creative group to do something similar to what he had done in the past. And the corporation that had the contract cut the contract. So 3 months into his new gig, they again cut the whole group. So that, you know, and ultimately now he's got himself a good in-house job, but he's making less money and has less benefits, and you know that story. So you know, it warms my heart to hear about your you know, successes on Patreon and, you know, whatever, you know, tools that are possible, because I think it's the future for creatives and get out of this, you know, the corporate game.
Well, it's you know, it's very often older people have a hard time approaching some of these groups because, again, they're facing that prejudice. But if you go on to I tell you, social media, they are immediately accepted, and they look at their content. They don't look at who they are.
Right. Yeah,
and,
exactly.
You know, like I was just saying about Dionne Warwick, she's 80, and it's like listening to a teenager discover a whole new world, and she's bouncing off the walls. Oh, right now she's shocked everybody because she has discovered an absolutely blue hip hop song that she's bopping to, and she's got the entire music world in shock because she's just come back on and she's as wild as crazy as any of the kids, and they just love her. She's come out. I mean, who's heard of Dionne Warwick lately, right? I mean, we remember her back from the 70s, and all of a sudden she's bam back in the scene.
Yeah, go for it.
Wasn't she promoting that psychic network for a while?
Well, yeah,
the thing was, in her career.
It's kind of like a niche, and nobody hears about it. But by God, I'll tell you what's, if you go over to Twitter, there's, you know, if you want to talk directly to people, you can talk to Nancy Sinatra, you can talk to Robert, you know, anybody and everybody. And one of my favorite commentators, political commentators, is Brent Spiner, the guy who plays Data on Star Trek. He has a very dry humor, and he nails the political points. He's excellent. And so of course he I don't know if any of you have seen his video he did about having so many jobs, and these jobs have come out of being on Twitter and social media.
Yeah.
But he did it as though he had left his mic on and was dancing up and down his stairs. It was hilarious. It was just a big hit all over Twitter. Cool. Doesn't matter who you are, you get on if you provide the content, it's almost like people are like, wow, look at this 80-year-old go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little weird. It's weird to me because I'm not really seeking. I do a webcomic, and somewhat inconsistently, I'm just starting out. I do this little webcomic, and I get commissions, but I'm not really seeking commissions at all. You know, and
might as well do them.
Well, I don't really have the time, you know, and stuff. But somebody said, "Hey, can you do a thing?" And I threw out a number that I thought would keep me from having to do it. And this is like, well, yeah, I do $100 a page, and then like, great. I'm like, really?
No. If you're doing a comics page, black and white pages, black and white inks start at 150. And so if you're giving them a comics page for $100, it's like, woo.
Well, actually, just the drawing.
If they like what you're doing, and you can get that much. I mean, you're talking about people who pay 100, 200, 300 for a beautiful drawing, and so don't be surprised. So there's your living coming at you right there, and all you got to do is clone yourself. That's all.
God, it would.
I know. I only do it occasionally, you know, but it's like somebody asked me, and I do it. You know, I have a day job, so I do that. But it's like, wow, I did not expect people to pay me, you know, $100 just to draw a page.
So,
congratulations.
So the commissions, is it because of your style? Is it your style, Alan?
I don't know. People just I got the little web comic there that I'm doing, and
right.
And people link to it and say, hey, can you draw me a picture of Wolverine or something like that? And I'm like, yeah, $100, and no one seems to bat an eye. And I just
you want to be careful with that because of somebody else's copyright.
Yeah,
they're kind of loose on that, but that's an area that can get dangerous.
So if you do a drawing of a famous character like Wolverine, is it in fact a copyright issue?
Well,
it hasn't come up because I'm very
about
small.
the comic book companies is, and this is something that Disney has finally learned to live with it. Star Trek comic and the comic book people have always considered the fans and the artists doing the characters and trading them out and selling them back and forth to kind of be like free advertising.
Yeah, I
So
would
they
think of it
real
that way,
loose
but
on it.
I think that, yeah.
But you need to be
Although
Yeah,
careful.
they
usually what
don't
I
lose
do
it.
is something like the latest thing I did was Snoopy as Wolverine,
Yeah.
and
Now I don't know what the copyright on
so
Snoopy is because I think the daughter owns that, and I don't know what her attitude. And I think it's a daughter. I may be wrong.
A
Well,
lot of
Be
it is
careful.
also what falls underneath fair use. I did a video on with my friend Daniel Abraham, who's a lawyer, on parody versus satire. And if you can make or argue the distinction, there's a lot that you can get away with. But don't forget that back when Disney first bought out Marvel, the guy who created Ghost Rider, they sued him, and he ended up having to pay, I think it was between $27,000 or $37,000 in back amount to Disney for all the work, all the drawings that he did at conventions, even though he was the person who came up with Ghost Rider. Now, Disney has since kind of eased up the field a little bit on that. They're not going after everybody. And before Star Wars was tipped or sold over to Disney, Star Wars had an open policy that you could go ahead and draw Star Wars characters so long as you didn't use the word Star Wars.
Yeah, that's well, the other thing is when you talk about somebody came up with a character, they're working in-house. They don't own the copyright. So if they go out and they're doing this, you get picked up like a, you know, like I say, Marvel's kind of loose about it, and DC and all the rest of it. It's a traditional convention environment. But then they got picked up with Disney, and Disney, because of
Disney's
course, after
evil.
years and years and years of being in the business, is hard on copyright. But you say that Marvel is kind of loosening them up, aren't they? Kind of getting them to realize that, whoa, this is not.
I
such
only
a bad
just put this together just now, but there was a story in Marvel, fictional story. This character invented a suit of armor. Gosh, what was this? Guardian from the Alpha Flight, and he made the armor in house, and the company that he worked for took the armor and was going to use it for the military, and he didn't want it used for military, so he stole it. And I only just realized that this was a criticism of the in-house thing with art and stuff. I didn't, you know, he stole his armor and became a superhero. In defiance of the company stealing his armor.
If you want,
can I ask you guys a question?
A nice history, just check out the what is it, the Cartoonist Legal Defense Fund. They have a wonderful history page on all these different lawsuits that have come over.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I have to go because my sweetie just put dinner in front of me. But on that note, I did want to say that if you guys didn't know it, the CASE Act got passed. The CASE Act, it sets up a small claims tribunal for copyright, so that if your work is infringed, you can take the infringer to a small claims tribunal, which means you don't have to pay like $300,000 to bring a copyright infringement case. It's basically the equivalent of a small claims court for copyright. It's going to take like 18 months to set up. But one of the things you can do in the tribunal is if you are using work, but you think that your use of that work is permissible, you can actually bring that before the tribunal to get a sort of a judgment that you are not infringing a copyright, maybe because it does fall under fair use. So that is really great for people who do parody and stuff like that. And for designers, it's brilliant because we use work and we're never really sure of what the copyright is. So it creates this forum for us to resolve these disputes without bankrupting each other. Yeah. But thank you so much for letting me crash your meeting. And Ted, I really got so much out of hearing your presentation. It was really informative. Really appreciate the invitation.
I want to ask a
Nice to see
question.
you, Rebecca.
Can I ask a question?
Go for it.
I'm starting my online stuff, and I've been posting stuff. But one of the things that I find is that when I start posting stuff to YouTube, not YouTube, but Facebook, I get an immediate thing about, if you want to increase your thing, just give us some money. How does that work? How does that work? I haven't
never
done it
used
yet.
it. I don't know.
Reach more people, you know, and it gets.
I know how it works on Instagram, but not Facebook.
Well, tell me about Instagram then, because I got to post it on Instagram. How's that?
Like if you pay extra fee, they'll like promote your post into other people's feeds, so that they'll click on it. Maybe they'll follow you, so stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's Facebook too. I mean, that's the way it works. It increases the number of people that see it. And Robin, my wife, Robin, with her addiction to cat videos, she occasionally sneaks in and buys the thing, with Facebook to get it to be seen by more people. So the fact that she has now over 5,000 followers is, I don't know how many of those followers she's paid for. Maybe she paid for them all.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay. Well, what about the idea of using the hashtag stuff? How's that?
Oh, hashtags are essential, especially if you're doing it on Instagram or Twitter.
Yeah.
If you're not using a hashtag, nobody's going to see it, because how big is your, I've got maybe 2,000 people on my Twitter following. I don't even know if you're there yet, but 2,000 is a very small audience. However, if I was to put a hashtag on there that said something like cat portraits or cats, suddenly,
right,
at any particular time, someone's looking for a hashtag for cats that's popping up on their feed, and they're going to see you. You're going to be opening yourself to a much larger audience. So pick very specific keywords that are both narrow and broad in scope, and kind of aim for that particular audience.
Okay, and one more question. I want to do some more reading on how to market myself better online. Is there anybody have any particular information or a source of information that can help me do that? Marketing myself online.
There's a handful of books that I don't remember the titles for.
LinkedIn has tons of good information about
Which
how to
one is called
market.
LinkedIn? Yeah.
LinkedIn's a good one.
And there's all kinds of free advice on LinkedIn and on how to market yourself online. Yeah.
And if what you're marketing is a web comic, consider listening to, I believe Brad Geiger does a podcast.
I believe, yes, he does. Generally.
We'll get her in a sec.
Yeah, and going back to the Instagram, Facebook question with the payments, I tried that once when Instagram was doing a kind of free miles offer, and maybe it was just for that one, but my impression was, yeah, I got a lot of eyeballs, but ultimately it was pretty much empty calories. I didn't get any likes or followers out of it.
Okay.
Our drawing group, Claw, uses it to promote our events when we have something big coming up. And we can usually draw in, we noticed that we had at least a 50% increase in attendance.
Well, say that again. What did you do exactly? What did you do?
Well, when you create an event announcement on Facebook,
yeah,
we would promote it. We'd spend like maybe just $10 to promote it, and we got a bump up of 50% in attendance. So where we were getting 10 people, we're now getting 15.
Okay. I hear you. Well, thank you. I'm still trying to figure this out myself. So,
find somebody that fits your hope, what you would like to do, and copy them. I think that's a really effective strategy.
I was copying Donna a little bit there. Oh, Donna, there you are.
Yeah, just a minute. I'm over here sending a link off to Rebecca there. Just a second here. There we go. Ding.
Yeah, I found you on. I found Donna. I found you online through Instagram. And
Instagram is a blast because you know how we all use these for different things. Twitter is your hard-hitting political line. Facebook it's all kinds of things, including the rural phone book. Rural areas use it for everything, including like being Uber and finding jobs and finding mechanics and things like that. So it's very important to rural areas. But Instagram, I think by almost like everybody's agreed, this is art, this is creativity. So yes, we will have political cartoons and things like that, but Instagram is more like having fun with your fellow artists, because the thing about it is you want to sell your stuff, but we all end up being friends with a bunch of different creatives. And of course, we don't have the money to spend.
Yeah, we don't have any money. Yeah, I know. And that's something.
Just like looking at each other's work.
But that's inspiring, though.
It is. It's inspiring. It's wonderful.
Beans and rice and Jesus Christ. What can I say?
Yeah. Well, there's a guy. I have Spanish cartoonists, Mexican cartoonists I like to follow, which of course means I can copy everything they're saying, go over to Google Translate, and it's. I'm trying to learn Spanish right now, so now I'm learning Mexican slang just as fast as I
Oh
can.
Boy! What about so you said something about the advertisement through Facebook? You said something about Facebook, and then you digressed to it. Right then you jumped into Instagram. I missed that.
Was that Ted or?
You did.
Oh, me. No, I was saying on the different ways when it comes to actual advertising or buying ads, that the corporations make more money doing that. It's just that there's so many tools on Facebook that you can use. And like, I think it was Mark who said hashtags. Oh, super important.
Well, I started this for the first time this last posting, and I'm going to be doing a lot more. So
yeah.
I
got to get better at that.
Learning process for me. You guys are great. I didn't send you any money for dues. I have to admit that.
So I have like 18,000 followers on Twitter.
Ooh.
And I think that's certainly good. It's a big number, I guess. But I don't think I've ever gotten any clients from Twitter that I can directly. So in terms of awareness, so I guess those people know who I am, but, has anybody signed up to be a client? Did any of them sign up to go to the little workshop we did? I don't think so.
Well, that's more Facebook, because Twitter is, it's a different, think coffee house.
Yeah.
All right. So when you're talking about Facebook, you have everything from a bar to a classroom to a protest group organization or whatever.
Right.
But Twitter's more like your old-fashioned coffee house, and it can get rolling real hard. But you don't really. I think Instagram would be better almost to pick up clients, something like that. Twitter. People get. Well, I'll tell you the problem with Twitter is everybody's drinking their coffee in the morning, and after that they're not making the connection.
Right. Yeah. So and I find that most of my clients are from connections. It's my network, basically, some connection to my network.
Well, that's
which I think is very
as we get
traditional.
together more of these, as these online things get better, and we can start having what is it? Mark had Commission Con we all went to.
Yeah.
We can start networking on through Zoom and through all the rest of these. This is like, it's still new.
Right.
I mean, ever since COVID hit, we were all kind of still, trying to figure out what we're going with this, but it's all getting better all the time. Oh, and that's another thing about Patreon. Patreon has got a massive community with forums and everything else that you get involved in. And that's the other thing about Patreon. You're not just sitting there with your little page pumping out information. You get forums. You can also, this is another thing, you can volunteer. Oh, Ted, you should do this. You can volunteer.
Who you calling a kid?
I said Ted.
I said kid. Okay, no kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm done.
You don't think of yourself as a kid? But anyway,
At my
Patreon
age,
always.
I'd be happy to hear that.
They always want speakers. That is from their Patreon. That is a Patreon user. They want speakers. And somebody with your mass of information, what they do is they have the 2 or 3 hours of having different people on the Patreon meetings, and then it's on YouTube with comments wide open. And they're always looking for somebody who want to volunteer to do that. And you pick up all kinds of people who know about what you're doing that way. And they're all really involved in being in the arts.
Well, I went down to, no, I keep saying Kelso, but it wasn't Kelso. Anyway, I went to a Comic-Con down there, and I did a presentation on some artists that I knew when I grew up, like Al Williamson and Steve Ditko. But I also did a thing about science fiction art, 1939 to 1960. And I came out pretty good. I like that. That's much more my area of understanding, because that's when I was being nurtured as an artist. I was sci-fi art and stuff like that. So guess I could do something like that.
I can picture that stuff. I just love that stuff.
It's classic stuff.
I love it. Yeah. All right, guys, I gotta go.
Well, thank you too, folks.
Thank you,
Always a
Ted.
pleasure.
A great
Thank
talk.
you all.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Excellent
thank
TED
you.
talk.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And remember,
This is the Zoom clap. This is what you have to do.
well, anyway, thank you all for coming. Remember, I will have the Eventbrite link for our drink and draw soon, for if anybody wants to have a little more laid back interaction. And as I said, if you have something for Best of the Northwest, put it on the thread that I put the link for. But anyway, thank you all for coming, and I hope you all have a great evening.